Welcome. This is Uncommon Sense, a podcast presented by the Heshe CPA Knowledge Centre. The Centre is an initiative of the CPA Education Foundation, the charitable arm of the Chartered Professional Accountant profession in Alberta. Our weekly episodes feature conversations with Alberta CPAs, sharing their insights on a wide range of timely topics. Alberta CPAs work in every part of the economy and volunteer their time and expertise in virtually every community in Alberta. With each episode, we bring you voices and perspectives that reflect the diverse knowledge and contributions that CPAs bring to our province.
Hello, I'm Erin Schwartz, Director of the CPA Education Foundation, and your host for this episode of Uncommon Sense. Over the course of this season of our podcast, we're going to feature some guests speaking about ESG principles, or environment, social, and governance concepts. These principles, which focus on key non-financial aspects of doing business in today's marketplace, play a significant role in big and small organizations across Canada in 2025. And CPAs are often at the forefront of interpreting and applying these principles within the organizations where they work. Our guest on this episode is a CPA who is a leader in his company when it comes to elements of the social component of ESG. He's Darcy Yamada CPA CA. Darcy currently serves as Senior Vice President of Strategy and Transactions with EY Parthenon in Edmonton. Darcy has over 25 years of experience advising mid-market private companies and their shareholders on transaction strategy, mergers, acquisitions, divestitures, and financings. Darcy has experience working across a number of industry sectors, with a primary focus on and deep experience with energy and industrial transactions. Darcy is also an involved member of his community, and his volunteer contributions include service on the Board of Directors of the Alzheimer's Society of Canada and the Board of CPA Alberta, where he was recently named Vice Chair. For his contributions, Darcy received CPA Alberta's Distinguished Service Award in 2022. At EY, Darcy is also the Edmonton office's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Partner Champion, an aspect of his role that he places a great deal of importance on. It's that part of Darcy's work that we will focus on in this episode of Uncommon Sense, and I'm looking forward to hearing him speak about it. Welcome, Darcy.
Thank you, Erin.
We're beginning every episode of Uncommon Sense this year with the same question to every guest. Do you have a piece of uncommon sense to share with our listeners? It could be a good piece of advice you once heard, a life hack, or just a little word of wisdom that inspires you.
Well, I'd say a life hack, Erin, that ties into this conversation that has really helped me is just to try to be the best version of myself, to be true to who I am and to my personality. I think early in my career, I was told to be more aggressive, for example, and I tried to do that, but I didn't really act in a way that was really me, and it backfired on me. And so what I've learned along the way is that I can be assertive, when I need to be, for example, but by being more authentic in the moment, I can be more effective and get to a better outcome.
That's perfect. I think over the past couple of years, I've gotten to know you a little bit, Darcy, and yeah, the thought of you as aggressive just doesn't quite fit. That doesn't seem like you.
No.
So, and you've obviously done very well in kind of being your true, authentic self and bringing that to your workplace. So
yeah, I try to be.
Thanks for sharing. So you're a Senior Vice President responsible for strategy and transactions at EY Parthenon in Edmonton. That sounds really quite complex and demanding. Can you tell me a little more about what's involved in that role?
Well, I think what I like about it is it really allows me to bring all sides of my brain to the job. I'm really involved primarily in leading our teams in assisting our clients who, as you mentioned earlier, are usually entrepreneurs or senior executives in private companies. And we help them with selling their businesses, acquiring businesses, or raising capital to either go out and acquire businesses or to help them execute on other objectives, whether that be succession or organic growth. In terms of how my CPA designation and my experience as a CPA has helped me in that role, we obviously, being a sort of an M&A practice within a Big Four accounting firm, we do focus on the financial aspects of our work, a lot more than some of our competitors might. So we actually help our clients prepare and present their financial information in a way that actually highlights both their historical and their future financial performance in ways that can optimize the value that we can generate for them, either through a sale of the business or through a financing. Our team really digs into our clients' numbers to actually highlight the reasons and the rationale for trends in their financial performance or variances that might happen over the course of their sort of financial history. And we help them with due diligence and as well as financial models. So there's a lot of financial acumen required of our team, and my role now is really to help just to provide support to our team in helping our clients. And then beyond that, within that role, there's a lot of non-financial aspects of that role as well. So we have to do sales and marketing. We help with negotiations, and throughout, we're always building relationships with both our clients and counterparties, whether they be banks or investors on the other side of the transaction.
That's great. Thank you. It sounds like, you do a lot for your clients and there's probably a lot of variety. So do you have times when you're going into the office, going into meetings, or, starting up a project and you maybe don't really know what's coming at you, and it's, because it could go lots of different ways, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think that's what makes it exciting, though. And as you mentioned earlier in the intro, I've been doing this for over 25 years, and really that unknown or the dynamics of the role and the work that we do is what has kept me really interested in this work and allowed me to keep doing it for as long as I have. So the days go by quickly, and I think the flexibility that you have to demonstrate within the workday and with our clients, it's kind of it's a consistent trait that you have to have, because you have to be adaptable to what happens in your day, and during transactions you're always having to adapt to changing dynamics within that transaction process as well.
For sure. Yeah. I guess if it was kind of the same thing over and over every day, you wouldn't have been doing it all this time, right?
No, exactly.
That's great. So on top of all that, you're also a champion for diversity, equity, and inclusion at your firm's Edmonton location. So what does it mean to be a champion in this way, and what does the term DEI mean to your firm?
Yeah, so firstly, in terms of the role, we have a team that's actually doing the bulk of the work. And as a partner champion of our diversity, equity, and inclusion activities, I really am there to support our local staff in leading those professional networks and communities that promote the firm's values of diversity, equity, inclusion, and really creating a sense of belonging. And these networks include a wide range of interest groups, including our Professional Women's Network, Black Professional Network, Indigenous Professional Council, Pan-Asian Professional Network, and our Unity Network, which supports our 2S LGBTQ plus community as well. And that's just really to name a few. As far as what it means to EY, I'd say that the DEI focus of the firm is really, I would say, threefold. One, it's the diversity side is to really build a workforce that reflects the diversity of our community in which we work in, which is across a wide range of differences, whether that be gender, race, ethnicity, religious beliefs, sexual orientation, generational differences, abilities, and different geographic backgrounds. So a wide range of backgrounds that bring diverse thought. So we want to have that diversity that really reflects where we live and work. Secondly, the inclusiveness side of things and the equity side of things is really to create an inclusive culture and environment where all our differences are valued and where our practices are equitable. So we are always striving to have equitable practices in recruiting, in compensation, promotions, all of those things. And then also to create a real sense of belonging amongst our people. So it's one thing to have a diverse population, but from a firm standpoint to try to create inclusion, but we also want people to feel that they are part of a bigger whole. So that's the other thing. And then lastly, I think on an individual basis, I think we want each of our individual staff members and partners to really lead and team inclusively in all of their daily interactions. So I think it's really that will help create that sense of belonging.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah. You say belonging a lot, and I love that. We talk with Shafana quite a lot. She's done a lot with us on the DEIB subject, and that's what she uses, and she adds the B on the end there because belonging is kind of almost like an umbrella for all of it and kind of wraps it all together, because at the end of the day, that's such a big part of why we want to do the DEI work, is to create that belonging for everyone.
No, for sure. I think even over the last 20 years, roughly, that I've been really part of EY and part of our DEI work, it's been an evolution. And at first, it was probably more about diversity, making sure we had diversity. And then it evolved through inclusion, and now we're at this point where it's really creating that sense of belonging. So, I totally agree with what you're saying.
That's great. Yeah, so a lot of those different things that you talked about often fall to an HR department or something more like that, as opposed to, a partner who's a CPA, leading M&A type stuff. So how did you as a CPA in your role as partner come to be part of the DEI work in this way?
I mean, it's probably partly because I am part of a CPA firm, that there are obviously a lot of CPAs within the firm. But I'd say our firm does have an internal serving staff whose primary responsibility is to lead our DEI efforts. And that can include everything from staying abreast of current trends in what's happening with DEI, facilitating our training and development, and providing resources to the firm as a whole. I think, as I mentioned before, though, the firm does want us to team and to lead inclusively on a day-to-day basis in all of our interactions. And so I think it is important that our people are involved in leading those initiatives and are intimately involved in our DEI efforts. And so, whether it's internal or external client-facing staff, I think all of our partners and staff, should be part of that initiative, and I think that's why, for myself, I was able to get involved in the work that we do.
For sure. And you talked a little bit about how your, CPA designation really serves you in your client work. Is there anything that you pull from that CPA background that helps you as a leader in DEI?
Yeah, I guess I'll lean more on the experience that I've had because of my CPA designation, whether that's working within teams or leading teams. And that definitely has helped me in my role as a DEI champion, because really, again, it's the team that's doing all of the work, and I have to be just there to help support and facilitate the work they're doing and be a connection to our national leadership group and things like that. So I'd say that it's probably just the experience I've gained over the years because of my CPA designation and the work I've been able to do that's helped me in this type of work. And it's really just, again, being a role model for our staff and for our teams, and then being there to support them as needed.
That's fantastic. Where does your personal interest in DEI issues come from, and what inspired you to take on this role in your firm?
Okay, so this gets my interest in DEI is, when I reflect on it, it's quite personal. It was really when I first joined the firm, and this is going back almost 20 years to 2006. So this is a long time ago in the DEI journey, and the firm at that time was very committed to it, even back then. And at the time when I first joined the firm, I was partnered on a mentoring relationship with a senior female partner within the firm, and she was. I had a meeting with her, and she raised my awareness that many of the challenges faced by female professionals, things like having a voice, being seen, being recognized for contributions, were also faced by ethnic minority professionals at that time as well. Since I think both of our natural tendencies were to put our heads down, work hard, and on the assumption that we'd be recognized for that hard work. And at that time, she encouraged me to not be afraid to share my voice, to actually be willing to put myself out there, which would, presumably help support my personal and professional growth, and which was really great advice at the time. And it made me reflect on my own attitudes and behaviors and how they were shaped by both my personality and also by my family upbringing and cultural influences. And, when I looked back during my school years, I grew up, many years ago, and at different times. So I faced my own share of prejudices at that time, mostly playing sports. And it was probably limited mostly to verbal name calling and that type of thing, which, again, upon reflection, really paled in comparison to what my father and his generation faced. And I'll get a little personal here, but, just more of in honor of my dad's legacy, just kind of was thinking back, like, and my mom was 9, my dad was 12 back during World War II. And my parents and their families, during the war, they were uprooted from their homes on the West Coast. Their families' possessions were seized by the government. They were loaded up into trucks and moved inland as a safety measure in the name of national security. And so that's how the Japanese got distributed throughout the country. And so during that time, and even following the war, my dad, he didn't share a lot with us growing up. But what he did say, he did face a lot of daily abuse, bullying, and so he ended up dropping out of high school because he was facing that on a daily basis. And I look back, I really don't fully understand the challenges he faced, but he still obviously created a wonderful family life that allowed myself and my siblings to get to where we are today, obviously. My sense, even though I don't fully understand what challenges he faced, my sense is that the Japanese Canadians at that time, as a whole, tried to assimilate into the Canadian culture, and they left behind a lot of their own cultural influences. And so in my own way, too, I believe I tried to fit in as a younger person as well, which kind of circles back to what we talked about in terms of why my interest in DEI and supporting some of the initiatives at the firm and the values of the firm is so focused on. I think, I really want to support the firm's values of empowering all of our people to bring their whole selves to work, and for each of us to be valued for our differences, and through that to be able to create a sense of belonging, getting back to that word belonging again,
Yeah.
but creating a sense of belonging for all of our people, when we do bring our whole selves to work. And so I don't know if I've really thought about it at the time when I got involved, but it's more upon reflection I think about there's probably a thread that ties all of that personal upbringing, what my family went through and why I really felt so connected to the firm's culture and their values when I joined the firm almost 20 years ago.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing. And yeah, it sounds like that, conversation with that partner early on maybe helped bring some of that out from you and encourage you, along the path that you've taken, which is huge. But like you say, it's all the little pieces along the way that create that. Yeah,
I think, and that speaks to really the importance of mentorship. And as a young professional, I think if people can, sort of find a mentor to support them in their professional growth, I think that definitely was an impactful moment for me.
Absolutely. Obviously, EY and its associated businesses, including EY Parthenon, consider it important to champion DEI principles and policies. Why is that, do you think?
It's not just a moral imperative. I think the firm would say that there's a strategic advantage for focusing on DEI efforts that can lead to better financial outcomes and a more engaged workforce. So I think we've talked about the values about DEI and why the firm is focused on it, but it's a focus on the people, but it's also a focus on doing not just what's the right thing, but what's right for business. And I think I think the belief is that by bringing diverse perspectives to the table, across those various differences I mentioned earlier, that we can get to better outcomes because we get better diversity of thought and better ideas that are brought to the table if we can allow for those diverse perspectives. And so that results in better financial outcomes. And I think that firm really does believe that. I think, I think the belief is also that if you are aware of all those differences and what's driving the needs of different populations and people from different backgrounds, it'll allow you to actually respond to different challenges in the marketplace, seize opportunities, and actually be adaptive to the changes. Like we know that the demographics are changing. Obviously, our population is aging and the next generations have different needs than say my generation had. And the mix of the population across the country is changing as well. So I think the focus on and being aware of those differences will allow us as a firm to respond to those things more productively and also ultimately result in better outcomes.
Absolutely. And like you said, you want your workforce to be reflective of the population in the communities where you're working. And so, especially given your business model, the communities where you work, that's your clients. And so you have kind of all the, support and perspectives at the table for those clients, right?
Yeah, I think for sure it's both the clients and even our staff that the nice thing about working in an accounting firm is we're always having an influx of new staff and the younger generations. And so I think being aware of what, both from our client perspective and from our staff perspective, I think that allows us to hopefully respond in a positive way.
For sure. Are there any notable success stories you can tell us related to your involvement with EY's DEI initiatives?
Yeah, I think, just a couple of things I'll mention on that. And one of it's not really directly related to our internal DEI efforts, but I think through my involvement in these initiatives, the firm has a program called their Entrepreneurial Access Network, which is a program they've developed to support Indigenous and Black entrepreneurs that need support with resources and access to markets and things like that. And so through my involvement with our DEI efforts, I was able to participate in that mentoring program and acted as a mentor for a local Indigenous entrepreneurial leader, which was a great experience for me. Hopefully she gained something from it as well. And, I think that's been sort of tied to this whole view that the firm has of making sure that we're being open-minded and supporting those that maybe don't have as equitable access to resources. I guess another thing would be that through the involvement of the people, even on our teams, on these networks, I think it's allowed them to get better awareness of who they are, raise their professional profiles within the firm. I can think of examples of some of our professionals that through their involvement in the DEI initiatives became sort of more well recognized within the firm with other partners, which ultimately helped them gain the partner support to get them to the next level as well. So those are maybe a couple of things that are somewhat tied to the work that we're doing, but ultimately, I think again, just broadly, I'm hopeful that the work we're doing is helping create, again, that better sense of belonging for everybody on our team.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I think it sounds like what the firm is doing is likely working. And I can say from my perspective, seeing leaders like yourself in the profession. Obviously, I'm not at EY, so can't speak to there, although I imagine it's similar. But obviously, you're on the CPA Alberta board and moving into the vice chair role and a leadership role. And I think seeing leaders like yourself who are authentically themselves and who are breaking molds a little bit. We've been told, your generation told as a leader, you got to be aggressive. And there's certainly been some changes, but that's something I've been told as well, or I've seen, and that's kind of the role models we've had. So seeing you do your type of leadership and be successful and do well, and I think be a better people leader is just really impactful to know that leading that way works, and it has an impact. And I just really appreciate having role models like that.
Well, thanks for that, Erin. I really think that there's different ways to lead, and because there's so many different people, either rising to leadership roles or in leadership roles that all bring different perspectives, backgrounds, strengths, and skills, that I don't think we all have to be the same type of leader to be successful. And so hopefully organizations in whatever realm they play in, I think, can recognize that there's different ways to lead and different ways to get to a successful outcome.
Absolutely. So generally speaking, from your perspective, what can organizations, large, small, everything in between, do to increase their diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts? Maybe they're a little earlier on in their journey than EY might be. Do you have any advice or, quick tips to get moving on that path?
Well, I'd say for me, when I joined the firm, again, the firm was already committed to it. And so I think the most important thing is the tone from the top, that the leadership has to really truly believe in it, whether you're a small organization or a multi sort of jurisdictional global firm like EY. I think the leadership has to not only talk the talk, but walk the walk. And so I think that is what's most important, because everything will cascade down from there. Then you can develop your policies, procedures, initiatives coming out of that leadership. So I think that's what we have at our firm, and that I think what's really important to drive that type of inclusive culture, wherever or however big the firm is. I think specifically there's probably, specific things in terms of practices that will play out once you've got that culture in place. Things like, when you're building your team, that equitable recruiting process, setting goals that sort of are tied to that focus on sort of that, creating that sense of culture. And then the whole feedback, development, year-end review, assessment processes, compensation, promotion, all of those things have to be integrated into that culture. You have to be, just like performance generally across the board, you have to reward people for the right actions and right behaviors. And I think it's all kind of tied together. If you have that culture, you have to just reinforce that culture through your practices and policies. And then obviously what we've been able to do is the firm has created these different, what they call business resource groups, or these networks that allow people to connect and sort of work with their peers on promoting, some common interests and raising awareness of how their interests, need to be sort of better understood. Because I think it's hard to, even if you have the best intentions, I think it's good to have those opportunities to have that opportunity to learn more about our peers.
Absolutely. And yeah, those resource groups or working groups can be fantastic for the sense of community and camaraderie, and just, having someone who maybe has some similar experiences that not everyone at your workplace has. But in terms of making real systemic change, it can only go so far without having that, the appropriate tone at the top and the buy-in from leadership. So that's where I think having those champions like yourself kind of at that partnership level really allows those working groups to move forward and to make progress.
No, for sure. And I'd say even for myself, I'm able to do what I do in my little way to help things out, because our leadership at the very top is very committed to it. And again, it if you have a 3-person office, as long as that person at the top believes in it, I think you can make great things happen.
For sure. That's great. In the last couple of years, unfortunately, we've seen what could be considered as backlash against the concept of DEI, particularly in our neighbors to the south. How has your firm responded to what might be considered an anti-DEI sentiment?
Well, I'd say our firm, and very proud of this, is that the firm believes it's more important than ever that we stay focused on inclusiveness efforts. And so, we haven't seen any changes, internally in terms of how the firm is communicating our focus on DEI efforts. And I know that's not across the board. So I think at this point, our firm is staying true to its values, which is I appreciate that very much. I think from a personal standpoint, and this is maybe more of a personal statement than a firm statement, but there have been many points in history where we have taken some misguided steps, and I alluded to some of those in my own family history. But we know that there's many more sort of damaging and atrocious actions that have taken place in the past and continue to. So I think I personally believe that if the individuals and organizations that have the capabilities to stand up for what is right and just, and for those who don't have a voice, if we don't stay vigilant in this time, in the face of this sentiment, then we risk going down paths that I'm sure we don't really want to go down. Absolutely.
I couldn't agree more. Darcy, you've mentioned about some of the benefits that EY has seen in introducing DEI principles and policies into its workplace, and how it's, it is good for business. From a broader perspective, are there benefits to any organization to be doing this work? Is it good for the bottom line?
Yeah, as mentioned before, there is a shift in thinking from the right thing to do to the right thing for business, because ultimately it has to be good for business. And firms will do things which are good for their people, but ultimately I think creating a more engaged workforce will be good for business outcomes. And then, just generally it should lead to better results. And I was just, reading an article recently in the Globe and Mail where they did some research on companies that stuck to their DEI principles and values and those that did not. And they showed that Costco, who didn't back down on their focus on DEI, actually showed an improvement in foot traffic compared to some of their competitors. So I think that was a good example of sort of how that impacted the customers. Obviously, it's more of a correlation than a cause and benefit, but there was some correlation that the Globe and Mail actually thought worthy of actually showing. I think in terms of the staff engagement side of things, there is research that shows that diversity, fairness, and inclusion are non-negotiable for Gen Z and millennials. And so from the standpoint of recruitment, retention of this younger generation, I think the focus on DEI efforts is, again, based on research, is non-negotiable. And I think other research shows in terms of engagement as well, from Great Places to Work, for example, multiple times more likely for staff to look forward to going to work, to having pride in their work, and then wanting to stay at their jobs if they have a culture where they're trusted and allowed to be themselves. And that also that equitable companies, I think it was research that Great Places to Work had done that showed that equitable companies also show higher revenue growth and greater readiness to innovate. So I think there is research out there that shows that there are definitely business benefits to focusing on their DE&I efforts. And I know it's a sensitive topic right now, and different companies are addressing it in different ways. But there are, I think at least there's research to show that there are benefits to sticking to that focus.
Absolutely. And to your point, you mentioned earlier about the changing demographics of the workforce, and, the Gen Z millennials that are earlier in their careers and just getting into the workforce. This is something more important to them. So for sustainability of a business, you need employees, you need staff, and that's what's important to them. So it's probably, if anything, only going to become more and more important.
No, I would agree.
So, Darcy, you also have an interest in the recruitment aspect of the CPA profession, and you've talked a little bit about, equitable recruitment practices and ensuring that kind of the DEI focus is interwoven through kind of all aspects. So you do get involved with your firm's efforts to attract students into accounting and other finance-related roles at EY. What interests you about working in that space? And I suspect there is a DEI aspect to that as well, but if you can share a little more about that.
Yeah, I'd say that most of our organized recruiting happens in our assurance practice, and I'm in our consulting practice, so not directly involved with the sort of the influx of new students into our assurance practice, but they've been kind enough to allow me to participate in their recruiting efforts. And for me, when I have that opportunity to either attend meet the firm mixers or participate in interviews, I'm really promoting our firm's culture, and I'm happy to do that because I really believe in it. And so, I really want to help inform the students that are looking for the right career path for them about what our firm can offer them, not only in terms of professional opportunities, which a lot of firms can offer, but I think for me, it's really sharing my personal view that our firm is really committed to the culture of the firm and creating an opportunity for those students, to work in an environment that supports them. So that's part of my interest, and again, appreciate the folks in my other service lines allowing me to participate from that perspective. And then I think it is recognized by our recruiting folks that it's good to have different people with different backgrounds involved in those interviews and in the recruiting process, because we will, maybe ask different questions. We will interpret their answers in different ways because of our own personal backgrounds, because we all bring our personal biases, even if we try not to. And so I think just having a bigger mix of people involved in that process will help us to have a sort of a more equitable recruiting process overall. And I think the firm has recognized that and allowed me to participate because of that.
That's great. Yeah, again, it's about having the diverse perspectives at the table, right? That's great to hear. So probably our last question, I want to ask you a little bit about your involvement with the board of CPA Alberta. Congratulations, by the way, on being named the vice chair of the board.
Thank you.
For our listeners, CPA Alberta is the organization created by provincial legislation to regulate the chartered professional accountant profession in Alberta. This is obviously an important responsibility and one that underpins the role of the governing board, to be named vice chair. So do you want to tell me a little bit about your journey setting out to become a board member and now, with vice chair, and maybe too, if there's any kind of DEI lens there that you'd like to bring into the table?
Okay, well, thanks, Erin. I've had a long career as a CPA. I was actually thinking I was going to say I was on the back nine, but actually I'm on the closing holes of my career. And I hadn't been involved with the profession, for the bulk of my career. And I really want to give back to the profession, that has actually given me so much opportunity, so many varied experiences, and so much personal growth over my career. And I had the opportunity to get involved, which is really fortunate for me at this stage of my career. And, while I didn't have a really clear perspective on the role, I really believe that because, as you mentioned, CPA Alberta is a regulatory body governed by, the acts established by the government to provide sort of regulatory oversight of the profession in order to protect the public interest. And that is of paramount importance, and that is a priority. But there's actually so much more involved in serving on the board and helping provide some strategic direction for CPA Alberta. Things like to making sure that, as part of our strategic priorities, we're focused on ensuring that we're satisfying market demand, making sure that the organization is doing the things that we need to do to make sure that we have competent professionals entering the program and graduating from the program to continue to serve the public interest. Creating an effective market ecosystem where the CPA profession is part of this broader ecosystem of creating economic prosperity and also social value within the province as well. And then as part of the board's responsibilities, we do have to provide some financial oversight and overall risk management of the organization to maintain the organization's sustainability to continue to do what it does. So, as I've learned in my role over the last 3 years, there's so much more, and for anybody that hasn't been involved as much with the profession, I encourage all of you to get involved, because it's been so much more rewarding than I even anticipated when I first got involved.
Absolutely. And again, diverse perspectives at the table is really important. So, whether it's, sitting on the board or the various committees or other volunteer opportunities with the profession, there's a lot that you can do. And that, like you say, it's rewarding. I'm glad it sounds like it fills your bucket as well. No,
for sure. And so hopefully having some seasoned people on the board like myself provides some of that diversity of thought. So
yeah. And any particular thoughts on, as a leader at that board level, how you'd like to bring in some of your DEI kind of experience or perspectives to ensure a, even stronger functioning board?
Yeah, obviously, as you know, our chair of the board now, Marie Moneta, brings so many unique, diverse perspectives as the leader, as the chair of our board, which is exciting, and I'm looking forward to serving with her as our chair. But I think each of our board members, we all bring different perspectives, and that's what I think is sought, for our board composition, is to have, not only diversity of skill sets, but also different backgrounds, different regions of the province, and whether we're in industry or public practice or government or education, to have that diversity of perspective that we can provide well-rounded strategic leadership for the organization. So hopefully I can bring one aspect of that to the board.
Yeah, I'm sure you will. Well, thank you for that, Darcy. And on behalf of Alberta CPAs, thank you for the dedication you are bringing to your work on the CPA Alberta board and within the profession in general. We've reached the end of our time for today, so thank you as well for being a guest on Uncommon Sense. With what you and your colleagues are doing at EY to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion is impressive, and it's been such a pleasure to learn more about you and that work. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing both about your kind of personal and professional journey, and looking forward to having more discussions about it.
Thanks so much, Erin. I really appreciate the opportunity to share. Thank you.
The Uncommon Sense podcast is presented by the CPA Education Foundation and funded by the Heshie CPA Knowledge Center. The Knowledge Center was created through a generous donation by the late Brian Heshie. Brian was a distinguished Albertan, business leader, CPA, educator, and community builder. His generosity and commitment to education underpinned his good works across Alberta throughout his lifetime. The opinions expressed on Uncommon Sense do not necessarily reflect the views of the CPA Education Foundation. We would like to acknowledge that CPA Education Foundation offices are situated on the traditional Treaty 6 and Treaty 7 territories and Métis Nation homeland. The Foundation acknowledges that we reside on traditional and ancestral territories of many Indigenous, First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Their histories and culture influence our community to this day. The Foundation is committed to helping build a province where Indigenous people and their voices and experiences are heard, valued, respected, and celebrated. Technical and recording services for this podcast provided by Wolf Willow Studios in Edmonton. If you enjoyed this podcast, please be sure to like, subscribe, and tell your friends about us. If you have any comments about the podcast, write to us at cpaef@cpaalberta.ca. To learn more about the CPA Education Foundation and the Heshie CPA Knowledge Center, visit cpaalberta.ca/foundation.